If you're a beginning investor in the stock market, this video is for you. What's up, everybody? My name is Joseph, also known as First Gen Fire on Instagram. If you have Instagram, be sure to go check me out there. I'll put a link here so you can see my name. And in this video, I'm going to cover 3 funds that are great for beginning investors to get started with. Now, you can obviously make changes as you go along, but I think these are 3 great funds to consider getting started with as a beginning investor. Now, for those of you who are not beginning investors, these are still great funds to have in your portfolio for long-term growth. Now, before we jump into the exact funds, make sure you go down and hit the like button, smash it, whatever you like to do. I'm going to give you all the information that you want on these 3 funds to get started in your investing journey, or just give you the information so that you know where to go if you're thinking about starting investing at all. Also, while you're down there, if you like the video and you haven't started investing, please feel free to use my M1 Finance link that's down there and get your $50 free whenever you invest your first $100 with M1 Finance. Now, really quick, before we get into the video, I want to make sure I give you the disclaimer. I am not a financial advisor, nor do I claim to be. These videos that I make are for educational purpose only and entertainment, so that you have some information that you can go do your own due diligence with. So as with any investment, make sure you do your own due diligence after you watch this video or any other video. Okay, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump in so you can see what funds I want to talk about, and hopefully you can do a little bit more research to see if they fit your particular portfolio as a beginning investor. Now, the first type of fund I want you to think about is called a total US stock market fund. Now, with the total US stock market fund, if you are investing in this, you're investing in over 3,000 companies. That means that they're tracking the entire US stock market. And what that means for you is, as an investor, you're going to be going from small cap, smallest companies, to large cap or mega cap companies. Again, there are 3,000 of these companies that are made up of the total US stock market. So why is this important for a new investor to have a total US stock market fund in their investment portfolio? Well, number one, it diversifies your risk, meaning that if one of these companies happens to go under or something happens to the company, you still have 3,000 plus other companies that are going to hold your stock up. So your risk is much lower. I'm not saying there's not any risk. With any investment, there's risk. However, your risk is diversified, meaning that no matter what happens, you're going to have other companies that are going to be lifting you up rather than investing all your money in one particular company. I hope that makes sense. Now, I'm going to give you a couple stocks that you can go do research on that you might be interested in looking at. Number 1 is going to be VTI. Number 2 is going to be VTSAX. And the third is going to be FZROX. So these 3 stocks essentially do the same thing. They track the total US stock market, but they do have some slight variances, which I do want to explain to you. So VTI is a stock within Vanguard that tracks the total US stock market and has about 3,000 to 3,009 stocks within it. Now, VTI has an expense ratio of 0.03%. The 0.03 expense ratio, that is a great expense ratio to be able to get in because it's so low. The other thing that you can consider about VTI is that it's also an ETF. And an ETF essentially trades like a stock. So throughout the day, you can trade VTI like a stock. Now, that may be good or bad depending on how you look at it. But if you're looking at doing long-term, then you don't worry about that because you're not going to be trading in and out throughout the day. You're going to be putting your money in and leaving it there. So VTI is a great low expense ratio to get into the total US stock market. So VTSAX is very similar to VTI and it tracks the total US stock market. However, there is a slight difference. It's an index fund versus an ETF. So with an index fund, you actually don't get the price of that index fund until the end of the day. That's number 1. And number 2, you're not able to actually trade that in and out of the day. You only get to trade it at the end of the day. The other thing that's different is that you have to have at least $3,000 to invest in VTSAX. But once you invest $3,000, you don't have to invest that same amount every time you invest. You can actually put different levels of money, or dollars, if you will, or buy shares at smaller price points rather than the $3,000 once you get in. Another note is that VTSAX also has an expense ratio of 0.04%. Now, that's not a huge percentage jump. However, there is a difference there, and I just want to make sure everybody who watches this video does know that. So the next stock within the total US stock market fund is VZROX. The great thing about VZROX is that it is an index fund within Fidelity, meaning that whenever you use the Fidelity app or brokerage account, you can actually get this at an expense ratio of 0.00, meaning it doesn't have a fee every year like the other ones may have. Now, again, that fee's not large, but 0.00 is great. The other thing is it doesn't have a minimum investment amount, so you don't have to put $3,000 in. You can put whatever you're going to put into it, whatever dollar amount you want to be able to put into it to actually get started with it. Now we've talked about the particular types of index funds and ETFs that you can actually purchase that track the total US stock market, you know that the total US stock market is something that you may want to have as a beginning investor in your particular portfolio. Again, the main reason being is because it diversifies your risk and keeps you from having to invest in one particular stock. You're invested in over 3,000 different companies, from small companies to large companies, and this lets you get an idea of what investing really feels like. So the next best investment as a beginning investor to consider is an investment in the S&P 500. This type of investment actually tracks the top 500 companies in the United States. So you're not investing in all 3,000 companies that track the total US stock market. You're investing in the top 500 companies in the United States by investing in an S&P 500. Now, the three stocks that I want you to consider that track the S&P 500 are going to be VOO, VFIAX, and FXAIX. So VOO is the stock that is the Vanguard version that tracks the S&P 500 and has an expense ratio of 0.03%. One other thing to keep in mind about VOO is an ETF. Again, an ETF can be traded throughout the day, so you have the opportunity to trade that in and out of the day. However, if you're long-term investing, like I said earlier, you're not going to be worrying about trading it in and out of the day, and just want to make sure that you know that you have the ability to do that. Next up, we have VFIAX. VFIAX is the index equivalent to VOO. However, the difference is with this one tracking the S&P 500, this particular one, VFIAX, does have a minimum investment of $3,000, but similar to VTI that we spoke about earlier, you only have to invest the initial $3,000, and then after that, you can invest whatever you want to invest on top of the $3,000. Next up, we're going to take a look at FXIAX, which is Fidelity's version of a stock that tracks the S&P 500. Now, the great thing about FXIAX is that it has an expense ratio of 0.015%, which brings it in as the lowest expense ratio of all three of these stocks that track the S&P 500. The other great thing about FXIAX is that it has a minimum investment of $0. So as a beginning investor, these are the stocks that I will take a look at, because a lot of times as a beginning investor, you hear people talking about buying the S&P 500, but they don't talk about particular stocks. These stocks are low-cost stocks that you can look into that have a low expense ratio that track the top 500 or the top largest 500 companies in the US that would help you diversify your particular portfolio. So speaking of diversifying your portfolio, the next type of fund that we want to take a look at is a total international stock market fund. Now, the reason we want to take a look at this is because we want to make sure that we're diversifying our entire portfolio. And yes, the US stock market has been fantastic for a very long time, but we want to see if there are other places that will allow us to get a good return on our money if something were to happen. But we always want to make sure that we're diversifying as a single investor to protect our portfolio as best as we can. Now, the three funds that you can take a look at doing more research on are VXUS, VTIAX, and FXIAX. So the first stock that we want to consider is VXUX, which is Vanguard's International Total Stock Market Fund. It carries an expense ratio of 0.08%. And like our previous examples, it is an ETF, so you do have the ability to trade in and out throughout the day and whatever price point it is throughout the day. However, I will caution this, like I said earlier, because if we're investing in this particular type of stock, we're investing for the long term, not doing day trading. Next up, we have VTIAX, which is the index fund version of VXUS. However, the differences are it does have an expense ratio of 0.11% and also a minimum investment of $3,000. But as we spoke about earlier, once you invest your $3,000, then you can invest any amount you want to buy more of that particular stock. So next up, we have FXIAX, which is Fidelity's version of a stock that tracks the total international stock market. Now, unfortunately, you do have an expense ratio of 0.06%. On the other Fidelity stocks that we talked about earlier, they didn't have any expense ratio. However, that's still a very small expense ratio compared to other types of stocks. With that being said, it does have a minimum investment of $0, so you don't have to invest a large amount to actually get started with this stock. So these would be the three international total stock market funds that I would say take a look at as a beginning investor that might help you stay diversified and keep your portfolio completely diversified, having a total US stock market, an S&P 500 stock market fund, as well as an international total stock market fund. Now, I want you to keep in mind, these stocks are just a few of the stocks within these types of funds that you can invest in. These are just ones I wanted to talk about as a beginning investor, and the ones that I think that you can go do more research on that would help you as a beginning investor to get started. Because a lot of professional investors will say, hey, get your feet wet with things that are diversified and have a lower risk before you start investing in things that may be a little bit riskier. Now, with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to go down and hit the like button, subscribe, also leave a comment, because all those things are free and they tremendously help out the channel. Thank you so much for visiting my channel. Again, my name is Joseph, also known as First Gen Fire on Instagram. If you want to connect there, please do. And as always, our aim is to help you get smart with your money. We'll see you guys in the next video.